I'll admit it, I've been there. You see a cheap MIG welder on a marketplace, the price looks like a steal, you picture a weekend project finished in an hour, and then the machine sputters, the wire keeps feeding unevenly, and the weld bead looks more like a line of melted plastic than metal. The regret hits hard because you end up with a half-done job and a dent in your wallet. That's why I wanted to see if there's a middle ground, something that isn't a $150 hobby unit that quits on you, but also isn't a $5,000 industrial rig you'll never fully use. The Millermatic 211 PRO promises to sit right in that sweet spot, and after spending a few evenings setting it up in my garage and testing it on a few real projects, I think it might be the smarter buy for a certain slice of the market. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the category you're stepping into. MIG welding is the go-to method for anyone who needs clean, consistent welds without the fiddly foot pedal control of stick welding. The biggest pain points for buyers are usually threefold: voltage flexibility, can it run off standard household outlets, ease of getting a decent bead on the first try, and how forgiving the machine is when you're not a full-time welder. The Millermatic 211 PRO tackles each of those with its dual voltage capability, the BeadVision Auto-Set system, and a fairly robust drive train that's rated for spool gun use. In practice, that means you can plug it into a 120V outlet for small home jobs, or switch to 240V when you need more arc power for thicker steel without buying a second welder. Setting it up was surprisingly straightforward. The machine comes with an MVP, Miller voltage plug, that lets you swap between 120V and 240V without fiddling with internal jumpers. I plugged it into my garage's 240V circuit for a project on an inch steel frame, then switched back to 120V for a quick repair on a garden fence. The transition was seamless, just a couple of minutes to change the plug and adjust the voltage dial. That kind of flexibility is a hidden value you don't see on the spec sheet, but it saves you the hassle of buying a separate welder or a heavy transformer. The first thing most new owners will notice is the BeadVision Auto-Set feature. Instead of manually tweaking voltage, amperage, and wire feed speed, you select the material thickness, and the machine does the rest. I tried it on inch mild steel, and within a few seconds the display lit up with the recommended settings. The first bead I laid down was smooth, uniform, and had that professional melt-through look you only get after a few hours of practice. In real-world terms, that translates to less trial and error on the shop floor and faster turnaround on jobs where you can't afford to waste time calibrating. For a contractor who needs to move from job site to job site, that Auto-Set can shave off half an hour per project. The Dyna-Pulse MIG technology is another selling point that shows up in day-to-day use. It delivers a pulsed current that helps control heat input, which is especially useful when welding thin sheet metal that tends to warp or burn through. I used it on a 1mm automotive panel, and the pulsing kept the heat low enough that the metal didn't distort, yet the penetration was still solid. That's a practical advantage if you're into autobody work or fabricating parts that need tight tolerances. Program memory is a feature that sounds fancy, but is actually quite handy. The welder lets you store up to 3 custom settings, so if you find a sweet spot for a particular material, you can recall it later without re-entering numbers. I saved a setting for inch stainless steel, and each time I switched to that material, the machine recalled the exact parameters I needed. It's a small time saver that becomes noticeable over the course of a week's worth of varied jobs. Now, no machine is perfect, and the Millermatic 211 PRO does have some trade-offs worth mentioning. First, the unit is on the heavier side. It's built like a small fridge, which is great for durability, but means it's not the best option if you need to lug it around a large construction site daily. You'll likely want a dedicated cart or a sturdy workbench to keep it stable. Second, while the Auto-Set is convenient, it can sometimes be too conservative on thicker material. I had to manually bump the amperage up a notch when welding 1-inch plate, because the preset kept the penetration shallow. That isn't a deal breaker, Just a reminder that you still need to understand the basics of MIG welding to tweak the machine when you push its limits. Who should consider buying the Millermatic 211 PRO? If you're a serious DIYer, a small shop fabricator, or a contractor who needs a reliable MIG source for a range of material thicknesses, this welder hits the mark. Its dual voltage flexibility lets you run it from a typical household outlet for light work, and you can step